Welcome to the Whole Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you become a fat burner, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everybody, it's Debbie Potts and Brad Kearns are our co-host today. So Brad is Primal Endurance King and podcast author, publisher, and you work a lot with Mark Sisson, and you guys have a new book out called the Keto Reset Diet to Reboot Your Metabolism in 21 days and Burn Fat Forever. That's a pretty strong statement. So Mark and you, did you work with Mark before with the Primal Blueprint book?
Yeah, so Mark Sisson, my longtime sidekick and the leader of the Primal movement. We've had a great run here for a decade, writing a bunch of books, publishing other people's books in this primal paleo realm. And now it seems like keto or the ketogenic diet has been risen into great popularity, especially in the primal paleo low carb ancestral health scene, but also to the general population. It's become like the hot new diet. And with that sort of phenomenon, that fad, there's a lot of risks of people misinterpreting it and jumping into this extreme carb restriction out of nowhere and thinking that they're going to lose weight and feel great. But going ketogenic is a pretty serious dietary transformation, even if you're already aligned with primal paleo. So you have to do it right and really understand what's going on in the body when you basically force your body to generate this alternative fuel source called ketones, which are made for under circumstances of significant restriction of dietary carbohydrates. So when you are, this is a genetic starvation mechanism from our ancestry, that when you don't have carbohydrate intake in the diet, you start to produce these energy-rich byproducts called ketones, a byproduct of fat metabolism in the liver. And they burn in the body, especially in the brain, just like glucose. So we know that the brain can only burn glucose, fat, protein. And so when your blood sugar is low, you feel draggy and sleepy, and your brain, which is such a huge energy demand organ, it burns about a quarter of calories just in the brain, even though it's only 3% of our body weight, 4% in my case. But you have this to a really clean burning and healthy fuel source known as ketones. But of course, it takes a lot of work and restriction, because even if you can a small amount of dietary carbohydrates, like a half a glass of orange juice or a few bites of an energy bar, you will shut off ketone production and you'll be back into preferential glucose burning, which is kind of how most of us have lived our entire lives. We've been on this carbohydrate dependency pattern. You and I have talked so much about it on previous casts and talking about the primal endurance philosophy for endurance athletes to get off that carbohydrate train and get better and better at burning body fat. So the keto reset is basically the ultimate expression of being fat adapted and being so good at burning body fat that you're also making this glucose-like byproduct to really good at burning energy internally and being free from dependency upon regular meals of any kind to generate your energy. So you get fat, you get skipping meals, you can eat nutritious high-fat meals such as an omelet in the morning, which has almost no carbohydrate, and carry on for many hours without having to top off the tank that we're so familiar with this concept when we're preferential glucose burners.
So this is what you can watch out, Brad. You can talk nonstop and not even take a breath. You're just so knowledgeable and passionate about this topic of nutrition and metabolic efficiency for athletes, as endurance athletes, as we talk a lot about in your podcast and this one, triathletes, but also strength training. And that so many people I just got back I was at Ironman Hawaii for a few days, and everyone still is, into the goo and the Gatorades. And it seems like it's a hard conversion to get people to realize when we're sitting here, we should be burning fat. When we're sleeping, we should be burning fat. When we're doing a 3+ hour bike ride, we should be burning fat. So for just the regular non-athlete, I think it's even more we should be burning fat. But we've learned and talked about many episodes and are back to our Fit, Fat, Fast podcast we had for a couple of years that was all we talked about is metabolic efficiency, that it's still to this day a problem, even though keto is becoming this trend word. So I find your book with Mark Sisson really helps kind of get some clarity what it's about and why we need to be having this reset, because like you said, a lot of people will try it or they don't get it and they'll just think, oh, it's like, you know, the whole paleo fad and now it's keto. They don't really get the whole thing, why they need to change and how to do it. So your book is kind of designed, is my long drawn out way to say this, is to kind of design how to gradually switch over so you don't have to keep messing yourself up having that orange juice and that Cliff Bar for breakfast before you go for a run. So kind of talk about how it's the benefit of it for athletes and kind of why we need to have this gradual reset to switch over to be fat burners.
Yeah, we have a big identified problem here, which is the worst kept secret in the athletic scene, and that is that we're sugar burners. We're carbohydrate dependent, and our efforts to training and burning calories and pursuing fitness is not always aligned with health. And in fact, in many ways, it can compromise your health when you're consuming a lot of carbohydrates and burning them up. You're producing a lot of free radicals in the process of burning this dirty burning fuel source that we call carbohydrate. And realize that even complex foods like your sweet potato are being broken down and converted into glucose to be burned in the body. So if you're primarily dependent on dietary carbohydrates as your energy source, and that's the case for a lot of highly trained endurance athletes that can go out there and ride for 5 hours if they have 7 gels and 4 drink of a sugar water solution. So they're kind of on this train where they're burning a lot of calories, mitigating some of the damage of sitting on your ass and eating a lot of carbohydrates, right? And if gels all day at work, you'd be in really bad shape. As long as you're biking, you're burning through some of that, but your overall picture is not optimal because dependent on carbohydrates for energy, and a lot of times you're throwing in those nutrient devoid carbohydrates because you have that free pass because you burn so many calories during the day, so you get to go home and consume a tub of Ben and Jerry's at night, or have a lot of breads and cereals and pastas and grains and things that have fueled the athletes for so long with no second thought. Now, a lot of people out there today, the observation is that even with their devoted training efforts, they'll still carry around a significant spot. Even in Hawaii and Kona, where you had to qualify, and it's the highest level of athletes, you still see some people that, whether you ask them or whether they look to say, yeah, drop an extra 10 pounds, I'd go so much faster. Or, yeah, I qualified for this race, even though I'm carrying an extra 20 based on my cardiovascular performance. But there's a spot out in this game, which is shocking. And it's not, there's something wrong with this picture. If you're running 52 miles a week and running marathons, or you're training for 13 hours a week for the Ironman, there's a reason why you should have excess body fat, but it's an indication that you're in this carbohydrate dependency pattern where you're not unlocking that fat storage, burning it freely while you're sitting at your desk or while you're doing the 50-mile ride and the things you describe. So what we want to do for everyone here is to unlock that from storage. The way to do that is to lower the insulin production in your diet that's a consequence of how many carbs you eat. And this is widely regarded the number one public health problem of modern times is this metabolic syndrome group of health conditions that's primarily driven by wide excessive insulin production in the diet from a carbohydrate-based diet. So the first step in the keto reset, and the first step for anyone who wants to clean things up, wherever they are on the spectrum, if they're out of shape, if they're a racer that just came back from Hawaii and wants to improve their time, but you can take the big 3 modern offensive foods, which are grains, sugars, and refined vegetable oils. And these things comprise a huge portion of daily caloric intake. They contribute very minimal nutritional value to your diet, and they stimulate excessive insulin production. They keep you on that carbohydrate train. Now, it's a challenge, and we've been eating this way for decades, right? Especially an athlete. They're used to going out there with the 3 gels in their pocket and the drink. So what we want to do is sort of make an effort to wean yourself off these harmful foods by restricting them from your diet for that first 3 weeks and force yourself over into the fat burning mode. And the easy way to do this, or the most sensible way, is to just transition over into consuming delicious life meals. So you go from your morning cereal, smoothie, toast, to a delicious omelet with bacon and avocado and salsa and cheese. You're still nourishing yourself with wonderful food that's satisfying, that you can burn easily, that'll keep your energy stable, but you're not defaulting and backsliding into carbohydrates, which is so familiar to athletes and non-athletes alike. And then the second part of that, because you asked about athletes and you're just coming back from Kona, collectively, we engage in this type of chronic exercise pattern, we call it, where you're going out there and training every day at a little bit too elevated to be a classic fat-burning heart rate. So you're burning a little bit of extra sugar in each workout, and you're going back toward carb dependency because of your workout pattern. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have a big health concern here besides a performance concern. I mean, the performance concern comes if you're carrying around even 5 to 10 pounds of excess body fat, which virtually every endurance athlete, even pros, will say, yeah, I wouldn't mind losing 5 more pounds, but it's a little bit of a struggle when you get up to there. And some people are carrying 20, 30, 40 extra pounds, even though they're putting in a ton of training hours. And that's just an indication that suffering from this carbohydrate dependency metabolic state, where the dietary carbohydrate intake is high. The calorie burning might be high too, but they're out there in many cases training at too elevated of a heart rate to do a proper fat burning workout, or they're training in a chronic manner where they're constantly depleted and triggering this overconsumption of food as a reaction to the overly stressful workout patterns. So building that aerobic base, being disciplined with your heart rate so that most of your training volume is done at comfortable fat-burning heart rates. And then with the diet, as the Keto Reset Diet prescribes in this first 21 days, the first step is to very diligently restrict your intake of the big 3 modern offensive foods, which are grains, sugars, and refined high polyunsaturated vegetable oils, which also mess up your ability to burn fat and cause all kinds of cellular damage. But when we're talking about grains and sugars, that is a lot of times the centerpiece of the average American diet, and especially the typical endurance athlete when they're thrown down energy drinks and synthetic fuels like the energy gels, as well as eating these grain-based meals where they're having pasta and breads and cereals and rices and things that really load up the body with an excess of carbohydrate, stimulating an excess of insulin production, and thereby locking your body fat into storage so that it's inaccessible to burn for energy. Everything's a little bit mitigated when you're training and you're teaching your body to burn calories and burn fat. But when you're back in this carbohydrate intake pattern in daily life, it really can interfere with your performance goals as well as your health, because when we're in this glucose burning dominant state, we're generating more free radicals from the burning of that so-called dirty fuel than when we're burning stored body fat or dietary fat, which burns more cleanly, using more mitochondria to process the energy and diffuse the problem of reactive oxygen species free radicals being created when you're burning this quick and dirty burning glucose. And we have an analogy about the campfire. You can look on the Mark's Daily Apple posts about keto, where if you envision, you're out camping and you take the time to build a really good campfire with those nice logs that burn all night with a nice orange glow. There's no smoke. You worked and found those logs and got the kindling started, and then got these logs burning for a long period of time with no smoke. And that is akin to burning stored body fat. And the opposite example would be if you just threw a bunch of twigs and a bunch of wadded up newspaper and made a fire, it would burn quickly with a big flame and then a lot of black smoke, and you'd have to keep throwing more wadded up newspaper into the fire to continue to generate warmth. And that's the analogy to snacking all day and having these high carbohydrate meals, your energy sags and you have to eat another snack, or you're training and you have to throw a gel down every 20 minutes. And it's simply an inferior way to generate energy in the body, not only for performance, but also for all the health concerns that come from high carbohydrate eating patterns.
Well, it was funny talking about, endurance athletes in Ironman last week, watching Ironman Hawaii. And then after at the Race Expo, there are so many booths now around town spread out for promoting their product, but most of it was for recovery and, using Normatec or using the electrodes, but also supplements, drinks and stuff to take. And it's, you wonder if we would eat this way, more the metabolically efficient training and then the way we eat, we wouldn't have as much damage to your body as you're saying. And you talk a lot about in the book and on your podcast and how, having canola oils and everything, even at Whole Foods, everything is canola oil, all these oils that are damaging ourselves as well. So eating this way and using the Keto Reset Diet, as it says, a great chapter on, the why about it, is that it's not a shortcut program, but it will help improve your performance as well as your recovery, which helps your performance. And, just changing the way you eat and getting rid of all those years of myths that the way we were told to eat for years and years.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough departure because there's so much cultural programming, and especially in the athletic scene. I mean, we have to be full disclosure here. When you're out there performing and you're going at a pretty vigorous pace, you're going to be burning a lot of fuel, and you might require supplemental carbohydrates to get to the finish line. So, we're not saying that you should all of a sudden head out the door and leave all your gels at home and just expect to burn body fat. If you haven't practiced and developed that skill, you're going to run out of gas, and you're going to be punching in for Uber to get yourself home. So the process is kind of big picture, and the best way to start is really right now, this recording coinciding with the off season, where if your training is toned down a bit, so you don't have these massive energy requirements like you have in the final build-up phase to your peak performance event at the end of the year. So if you're just in sort of a maintenance mode where you're doing workouts, but you're not pushing it out to the limit, you're not going for those 120-mile rides or those 20-mile runs where you're depleting your resources. If you can try for a dietary transformation under those more moderate circumstances, you'll have a better chance of succeeding and going and burning that omelet off, and then having a salad for lunch, and then snacking on macadamia nuts, and having meat and vegetables for dinner, and getting into this routine where you're eating a lot of delicious, nutritious food, but your carbohydrate intake is naturally declining to a more healthy point, and you're not suffering when you're trying at the same time to push yourself through these magnificent workouts. So once you get fat adapted, there's guys out there like Zach Bitter who are communicating this message really well, that when you're in the race, like anything goes to get yourself to the finish line. And if you want to bang a Mountain Dew at mile 20 or have a handful of licorice at the aid station on the Western States route when you're trying to run 100 miles, all those things are inconsequential, and in fact, probably a necessary component of performance the faster you're going. But if you're looking at trying to be healthy, trying to complete a marathon, and you see these people in the parking lot that are carrying plenty of excess body fat and are consuming because someone told them to consume a pre-workout carbohydrate solution, then they finish the very, very slow run and go home and eat a bunch of sugar. That's sort of antithetical to health and is a really tough way to go about pursuing athletic goals, is that overeating of carbohydrate in the name of performance.
So who should do this type of food plan? Do we all need to be strict keto, or just, what we've talked before is okay to eat more lower carbohydrates, higher fat, or do you need to be in ketosis if you did some of those testing? What have you found out with your experiments you've done over the years, last year?
Oh gosh, I'm continuing to experiment, and I'm having a really fun one these past 6 weeks because I've been pursuing peak performance athletic goals, and now I'm testing out eating more calories than I have been for many months prior, because I'm so keto and my fat burning is so good, my appetite is so moderated that I'm really not I'm not that hungry at times, and I'm able to fast until 12 noon or 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. without any effort. But overall, when you package that up with also trying to sprint and high jump and play speed golf, right now I'm testing out just consuming more food and getting more nutrition because I'm maintaining my ideal body weight and I have good blood values and none of those concerns that a lot of people have when they're considering dietary modification. So everyone's different, and athletes with low body fat and good health are different than someone who has metabolic damage or wants to reduce excess body fat and has struggled in the past. So these decision-making steps are going to vary based on your goals and your circumstances. But the unifying factor for everyone is that we have to manage this massive public health problem of carbohydrate dependency at whatever level of the spectrum you're on. And if you're obese and suffering from all kinds of health problems, you know you're on the very far end of the spectrum where it's sort of an emergency situation that you got to stop eating these carbs to save your life and stave off type 2 diabetes. Now, if you're an athlete, hey, maybe you have a few extra pounds you wouldn't mind losing, or you're just looking for peak performance enhancements, everyone deserves to go through the basic cycle as laid out in the book, which is the 21-day metabolism reset, and then a fine-tuning period of fasting to make sure that you're ready to go keto. And then the nutritional ketosis period should last a minimum of 6 weeks. And that's according to leading experts like Dr. Dom D'Agostino, one of the leading scientists, researchers in the keto scene. And the reason you want to give it that full commitment to 6 weeks is because it can be a little bit of a struggle in the first few weeks of going keto, because you're so used to having carb, you're working out, or when you're just going through your day. And so when you get down to that 50 grams per day of carbohydrate consumption or below to sustain or to maintain a state of ketosis, that's not many carbs. That entails a bunch of vegetables, because the vegetables don't have that much net contribution to your carbohydrate content. So we allow for a net carb count when it comes to the leafy green vegetables, the above ground, high fiber, low starch vegetables. So you can eat a ton of those. It's not like a Atkins diet where you're living on pork rinds and bacon all day. But the other carbohydrate sources like sweet potatoes or little sweets here and there, sweetened drinks, any form of grains, any form of sugars, those are really off the table while you're pursuing nutritional ketosis because it's so delicate. So what's going to happen after you get into it for a few weeks and make it through that potentially tough period where you're a little bit of an energy lull, or you might be thinking about going back to your Ben and Jerry's pints or whatever? Mm-hmm. You got to kind of stick to it and make this long-term commitment to 6 weeks, because then what happens is you experience these phenomenal benefits that people are touting. And I like to tone things down because I don't think there's no magic bullet that's going to transform your life just from changing, a few things in your diet. But in the big picture, this stuff will transform your life because you'll be escaping from carbohydrate dependency and feeling, it might not say feeling wonderfully, fantastically incredible with this amazing brain function, but I'd rather like to say that you're free from those typical disturbing symptoms of the afternoon blues and those periods of foggy brain function, or coming home at 6 p.m. and just feeling completely fried and crashing on the couch for 20, 30 minutes, and then having some potato chips and coming back to life a little bit, and then stuffing your face at dinner and going through these patterns that we're so familiar with from this carbohydrate dependency diet. So everyone deserves to make the Keto Reset a bucket list endeavor where you go through the metabolism reset, you fine tune with a little bit of fasting, you go through 6 weeks of nutritional ketosis where your carbohydrate intake is devotedly restricted to 50 grams a day or less. And then you can pursue all manner of long-term strategies where a lot of the athletes like to cycle in and out of carbohydrate intake phases. Some people are strict devotees of keto for the rest of their life, and they think it's the greatest and the only way to go. Author like Nora Gedgaudas and Dr. Phil Maffetone are both really big on long-term keto and not needing very many total carbs to get by and to thrive. And so the point is that you have freedom and flexibility when you get that highest level of fat and keto adaptation, that highest level of metabolic efficiency. But the way to get that is to go through the process. I would say, a strong recommendation would be to do it once a year at least. So at the very least, you go keto every winter and you kind of reset your cellular function, your metabolism. What you're also doing is upregulating these important cellular functions like autophagy, which is the natural cellular detoxification process where you're kind of cleaning out and recycling old damaged cells, cancerous cells, potentially cancerous cells, things like just kind of giving your entire system a reset and upregulating your fat burning genes and making sure that you're, a clean burning, non-carbohydrate dependent, high fat adapted person. So that would be my answer to that question is everyone should do it at least once and then think about doing it once a year at a minimum. And that'll probably be my long-term strategy because I'm not anal retentive OCD type of person, or I don't want to be if I have tendencies that way. So I don't really enjoy tracking my macros and being highly vigilant of every single thing I eat all day long. I like to go with the flow, and sometimes I'll eat a huge breakfast and sometimes I'll eat nothing. And sometimes I might even feel like having some sweet potato fries in Las Vegas sprinkled with powdered sugar. And oh my gosh, what a delicious, I ordered 2 of them from the famous hamburger guy's restaurant. I forget his name. But it was like the best sweet potato fries I've ever had. So I'm known to have carbohydrate binges if I feel like it. And because I've done the hard work and spent many years in this highly fat adapted state rather than carbohydrate dependent state, I can get away with whatever I want and not worry about it, and not worry about the psychological impacts of binging and having cheat days where you're depriving yourself so much because your approach is wrong. And, instead I want people to, eat what they enjoy the most, realize what makes them feel the best and operate the best, and have that wonderful experience of reducing excess body fat and keeping it off rather than constant frustration of not being able to do that. And so all these things are within your grasp when you make the commitment to take it all the way and go keto and get your fat burning upregulated to the highest level.
So how much is a cheat? Is that once a week after you've gone through this reset and the detox cleanse, you add, say, once a week I'm going to have a cheat meal, or is it once a month? How often do you find that someone can do a little extra carbs to say like you're in Italy and you want to have like amazing bread with olive oil and then, you automatically, the better you are to switch back and forth, the more metabolically efficient you are, fat adapted. So how have you found from your research how often can you cheat without being totally digressing?
Okay, well, first thing I want to say is I never, ever want to use that word cheat when it comes to a dietary strategy, because a cheat implies that you don't enjoy your baseline, your routine, and you need to cheat at something. So that mentality, I believe, is indicative of a flawed approach or a flawed mindset. So instead, if you want to call it an indulgent day or something like that, or a departure day from your usual routine of trying to restrict carbs as a keto person, or trying to just ditch grains and sugars and be sort of primal paleo, but not all the way keto. If that's your normal routine and you want to depart when you're going to Italy, I would call that an Italian vacation, and whatever goes, goes. But while you're on that Italian vacation and you're trying to overcome jet lag and you're trying to stay awake through the afternoon at the museum, there's a decision-making process that goes, do I really need those 4 pieces of bread to, make the most of my vacation here? Or maybe is a half a piece enough to validate the experience of trying the various assorted foods that are placed in front of me and part of the local culture? And I think when you're more mindful and more free in the mind, knowing that you have permission to consume whatever you want, and then making the decisions that, you're going to eat the exact optimum level for maximum pleasure and enjoyment, rather than mindless binging or getting into this mentality where, well, this is my cheat weekend, so I better stuff my face with as much shit as possible because I have to go back to this regimented, Spartan, non-enjoyable, daily routine. So we want to get out of that sort of mindset. And it's a little bit of a slippery slope. I agree, because when we make sincere commitments and say, okay, that's it, I'm going to ditch grains, sugars, and refined vegetable oils, and I know that going half-ass on this is going to set me up for failure rather than success. So we got to have some strategies here. And the example that you brought up is really cool, because I think if you're going on vacation and you want to make a decision at the start to say, I am going to loosen the reins on my usual dietary restrictions and try whatever I want on this vacation, and then when I come home, I'm going to get back into the groove. And if you're going to have bread on the table in Italy, it's not the same as going to the supermarket and buying more when you're back, because all of a sudden now, bread is on your standard rather than restricted. So we just want to be, disciplined about what we're doing and making clear decisions and being congruent with, having our behavior be congruent with our goals.
Well, that's a big thing. I think I don't like calling things a diet. It's a new way of eating, and then occasionally you have a celebration or something you might not eat. Be totally strict, because that's what I've had to do. Because years I was so strict on intermittent fasting and doing all this really low carb, and I can't sustain that because my background is about dieting too much in high school and college. You get into that as you're growing up, and I think it's a way of eating, and it makes me feel better, and it feels my brain and more clear and sharp, and my focus is better. So I was looking at the benefits and how you feel rather than, okay, this is how I have to eat. This is a new way. Everyone's doing it. It's keto. It's the new trend. But how you feel and how your performance improves mentally and physically, I think is what we have to look at, not a diet, because then it is something short term, and then it becomes just another fad, and people just return to old eating habits in 21 days.
Yeah, well said. I like that. I mean, some people are super motivated and can get all the way over into that category of orthorexic, where they're creating stress in their lives due to their highly disciplined and motivated nature to restrict this and that and everything else, so that they're, become very rigid. But I think on the other side of the scale are people that are kind of, spouting these self-limiting beliefs and statements like, hey, life's short, I might as well enjoy myself, or hey, everything in moderation. And I have sort of spicy comebacks to those, because life's short if you make it short, right? And it doesn't have to be short if you look after your health and don't engage in risky behavior like 100 miles an hour on a motorcycle on the freeway, or indiscriminate with your eating habits when there's so much absolute garbage and toxic foods placed in our food supply today. We have to be very disciplined and very serious about the matter of pursuing health. And so, when they say everything in moderation, if you apply that concept to your eating decisions in daily life, you're going to throw all kinds of disastrous and highly offensive foods into your body just because you don't have strict standards. And one story I told on my podcast that I'm thinking about a lot is, I was in New York City, and we stopped into this bakery, Magnolia Bakery, and they were serving these banana cream pies. And so I was on vacation, I was having fun, and I said, you know what, I'm going to try this. And it was the most delicious and natural and rich tasting banana cream pie. I mean, the whipped cream was actual whipped cream. There were bananas in there. There was none of this synthetic bright yellow coloring and things that we see from the processed foods that we've seen our whole life. And, I enjoyed the heck out of that thing. And I think I had a couple more before I left New York. But on the flip side, I'm going to say that I will never again, the rest of my life, eat a crappy banana cream pie from the market or from the birthday party or from the chain restaurant that, is put in front of me. Because once you've had something that's truly high quality, my view of the banana cream pie recalibrates to the point that I may just return to New York City and I will very likely hit that store and try another one. But as far as banana cream pies in my life, that's how I'm going to treat this issue, rather than saying, oh, well, I kind of fell off my diet when I went on vacation, and now I have all these things in my refrigerator because I'm blaming the cruise ship or whatever the outside influences were. So I think we can enjoy our life to the maximum, but at the same time, have this sincere commitment to health where we don't mess around. And when it's time to indulge, like you explained Italy, well, have your pasta in Italy and then, maybe make a decision at home base to say, you know what, I don't need this stuff and it's not doing me right. It's not allowing me to become highly fat and keto adapted, which is the healthiest way to live. I mean, it's validated that our cells and our bodies work best when we're in this sort of caloric efficiency mode rather than caloric excess mode, which is what you are on the carbohydrate dependency, because you're required to constantly fuel yourself with outside food because you can't burn stored body fat.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're running out of time. It's such a great topic, to so many areas to go into, but just two things to throw into there that I've talked a lot about in my podcast and with you is that you still need to stop deep breathing exercises, reset your mindset before you sit and eat a meal to have proper digestion and to break down your fats and to get your body to fully digest and absorb those nutrients. Because even if you switch eating this way, I think we still need to learn how to people to not just reset their metabolism, but reset starts in the brain. Digestion starts up top. So if you're stuck in sympathetic dominance, which most people are these days, you need to rewire your brain so you allow yourself to shift, as you're saying, fat to carbs, metabolic flexibility, but shift from parasympathetic to sympathetic, not be stuck. Because that's another big area I'm trying to educate people on, is that if you're not absorbing your nutrients, even if you're eating this healthy way, if you're struggling with all this new way of eating and has amazing benefits, but if you are still running life as a race and running around while you're eating and multitasking while you're eating, you might want to stop, take a few deep breaths in, really long exhales, and eat like they do in Europe. Sit and actually focus on your meal and enjoy it, because your book with Mark has these amazing recipes in it. I'm just looking at the pictures, which good to always have pictures for people that can't cook like me, but they're so delicious looking that makes you want to cook and eat them, but you have to sit and actually taste and enjoy your meals.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I'm totally going to steal that when we're talking about keto reset and we're talking about metabolism, resetting your mind. That is a beautiful concept, and sitting down to that meal and realizing like, hey, this should be one of the great pleasures of life. And I'm going to be, completely appreciative and completely engaged in the process of eating this healthy food, rather than, we're used to stuffing food down our face like we're at a gas station for our cars, especially the endurance athletes, So yeah. It's such a great recalibration to say, and I think you free your mind when you become physically independent from carbs for energy. And I'm not going to be professing to be an expert on eating disorders or anything of that nature. But if we look at the cause, if we really are addicted to food, to keep awake at work and to keep our mood stable and to keep the beast of hunger away and the uncomfortable feeling, it's really hard to have a healthy relationship with food. But if you realize after doing some hard work and converting over to fat adapted, if you realize that you can wake up in the morning and not need to eat breakfast to feel great and go about your day and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever you like, and not have to have that meal to function properly, then you can sit down to lunch and really appreciate, the delicious meal that's lunch, and be more kind of present with all your eating experiences rather than mindless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think it's resetting your mind and your body to shift to be a fat burning machine and being metabolically efficient. But an episode you can go back and listen to is with one of my teachers, John Jennis, about strengthening the vagal tone, the vagal nerve, and getting that to be stronger. So you can even he has a vagal tone oil that we use, and it's amazing, just shifting you to parasympathetic, but just eating and enjoying, kind of just like I said, an Italian way of eating. We had to ask for the bill. You sit there forever, and then we're so impatient and go that, to stop and eat longer than 5 minutes, we kind of get panicky. So I think we need to add that into resetting how we eat. But, you have, going back to the book, the recipes in here look very delicious and easy to make. And half the book is educational. So it really explains everything you're talking about more in depth. So it's like 160 pages or more of explaining all of this. And then it has the tons of recipes in here for the second half of the book. Did you come up with some of these yourself?
I have credit for a few of those recipes myself. The wacky ones like the dark chocolate macadamia nut bark or the Brad's nut bars, and mostly our sidekick here in Primal Land and the Keto Reset Facebook group hostess Lindsey Taylor, who's been on my podcast a lot. She's a psychologist and also an Ironman triathlete, talks a lot about the mindset and some of the things that we dabbled in on this show. But she's also a recipe whiz, and it's really widely known now that when you're eating in this low carb manner, you can still eat delicious meals and open up this whole new fantastic experience of indulging in delicious meals and being aligned with even keto guidelines. So there's 100 recipes in there that are full on keto, and it'll rock your world, including the snacks, and they call them the fat bombs, where you're having these delicious high fat snacks that aren't disturbing blood sugar, but they're keeping you satisfied between meals or even out when you're out there performing and exercising. So it's not complex at all. It's not a struggle at all. And like you said at the outset of the show or in the middle, that diet mentality is something that we're so used to it being like going to boot camp and being a soldier and diligently restricting ourselves from the pleasures of life. And so, it's about time to reject that mindset and realize that, when you accrue these benefits of cleaning up your diet, especially that first step of ditching grain sugars and refined vegetable oils, you're just going to find yourself dropping excess body fat without really trying and having no trouble keeping it off and no stress when your training volume is declined. And so now you're getting fat in the winter again and you can't stand it, but it just happens. And none of those things need to be part of the experience. We're just used to them being part of the experience because our diet is so disastrous in modern life and in modern endurance and high-level athletic training, CrossFit or whatever the community is. We're generally slamming down a lot of nutrient-devoid food that kicks us out of fat burning and keeps us addicted to carbs.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Well, where do people find this book?
Oh my gosh, probably at your next door neighbor's house. It's going crazy. It's on the New York Times bestseller list for the second week in a row, and that's it's a great achievement for the people involved, but you know what? It's also a great achievement for the community because we're still battling a lot of flawed messaging and a lot of leading spokespeople that are behind the game and behind the science saying that fat is bad for you and that all these other diet strategies where you're doing clever restrictive behaviors are the way to go. And we now know that they're a dismal failure when you're engaging in carb restriction without being fat adapted. You're just kicking into that sympathetic dominant, cortisol dominant stress response where you're making sugar from your own body. And we know all these things, but we're still getting hit with a lot of hype and a lot of flawed messaging. So I'm super happy to see other keto authors and keto proponents succeeding. I met Leanne Vogel at a conference recently. And I met, several other people that are doing a great job talking about how easy it is and how simple it is to once and for all drop excess body fat and not worry about it ever again. It's just a matter of making the right choices in your diet and enjoying yourself and not struggling like we've been programmed to believe for so long. So yeah, the book's available everywhere. KetoReset.com, KetoReset.com. You can go there and claim a bunch of bonus materials, digital format, so you'll get access to an hour-long talk show that I did with Mark talking about the book and some recipes and a PDF and an entire cookbook of sauces, dressings, and toppings, all free stuff just for buying the book. So you just kind of enter your receipt number or your proof, and you can download these items and learn more about the book at KetoReset.com. So thanks for the chance to plug there. Yeah, fun stuff.
Well, I think, I just had this idea. I've last, 8 years done on and off through the year at my fitness studio, 21-day detox. And a year and a half ago, I started doing this 5-day reset jumpstart challenge that we do more of a cleanse. And I'm adding in bone broth and the green juices. And and some of this more, some trying out those different keto supplements. But I think it'd be a great program to start to create for people like me, a studio that I offer to my clients. So we can do, how the Whole30 is all over, but Keto Reset Challenge that we actually host and run the program a couple times a year.
Oh, that sounds fun. Love to support that anyway, and get people in a group environment where there's group support, and having fun while they're at it is always a big part of success. So I appreciate what you're doing up there, Debbie, on the show and also at the gym. And how was it out in Hawaii? What do you have to say about that?
It was good. I actually went to kind of promote the podcast because those are our listeners, trying to get more of those endurance athletes to learn about the holistic method. How do you have to work on not just your exercise training, but what we always talk about, metabolic efficiency and nutrition, or lower carb, more the style, what we're talking about today, but also the sleep and the stress and talking about sympathetic dominance. So it was a great time. I need to go for a few more days next year because I went on, worked Thursday and Friday by Bike Works and Goo Table of all people, but they had a DJ, so it was kind of fun, and Garmin and bike repair place. So it was really great to connect with people because what's fun about Ironman Hawaii, I haven't gone for a couple of years. I haven't raced it since 2012, but I was there 2013. It's that it's a worldwide event. So if you're in the triathlon industry or as an athlete, there's 800 people from the U.S. in the race, and the other out of 2,600 people, and all the others are from different countries around the world. So just was really exciting to talk to people from Australia, New Zealand, and France, and Mexico, all different countries. So it's just a great way to connect with people and spread the message of what you're doing on your podcast and this podcast, that, we need to look at more than just our training schedule and how you train, and to be able to do this and not have the adrenal exhaustion, not have these health problems and injuries and recovery problems. So hopefully we can tap into all those people out there around the world and get more people learning about the keto reset and primal endurance and the whole athlete and holistic method. So it's fun.
Awesome. Yes, a good place to spread the word. Thanks for the update. Thanks for doing what you're doing. I'm glad to be on the show anytime.
All right. Well, thanks, Brad, for coming on. And we always go more than the 30 minutes because there's so much to talk about the Keto Reset program. And I'll start reading it. Just kind of got it this week, so I'm going to dive into it. I heard it's pretty amazing information when I posted on Instagram. I got some good report back from people that already started reading it. So congrats, and hopefully everyone goes and finds that book. And let's see, maybe in the new year we offer a Keto Reset Challenge online through the podcast and in Fitness Studio in Bellevue if you're around here.
Thanks for listening to the Whole Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at wholeathletepodcast.com. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.